Hi, welcome back to Elizabeth Ann Reads. I'm Anne. Today we're doing the Classics book tag. I was tagged by Rainey over at Rainy Day Reads like weeks and weeks and weeks ago, and I just haven't gotten around to it. But finally, today we're doing it. This tag was originally created by, as far as I can tell, It's a Books World, and that's a blog. So I will link both Rainey's video and this blog down below, so you should be sure and go check those two things out. But yeah, let's get into the questions. The first question is an overhyped classic that you didn't really enjoy. And for that, I'm going to say The Great Gatsby. Now, it has been years and years and years since I have read The Great Gatsby, so it probably deserves a reread at some point. But at the time I read it, I just didn't get it. Like, I didn't get why everyone loved it and why it's considered a great American novel. It was pointless to me. And I didn't like the characters, and I didn't find it interesting. And I just got really annoyed with it. So I would say The Great Gatsby, but I do think I should reread it at some point, but probably not in the near future. Question 2 is your favorite time period to read about. And with classics, that's going to be the Victorian period, because I love me some Brontes and some Charles Dickens. And I just love that era. I think it's so interesting to read about that time. And yeah, I'm pretty sure I would never get tired of Victorian literature. So, Victorian. Question number 3 is your favorite fairy tale. And for this, I have two answers. If we're talking fairy tales including like reimaginings and retellings and, redoings of the story, then it's Beauty and the Beast. Because I think that's a fascinating story, and I think it can be done very, very well. If we're talking purely original fairy tales, with nothing else, then I'm going to have to say The Little Mermaid. Now, there are a lot of fairy tales I haven't read, but I'm pretty fascinated with the original Little Mermaid story. Ironically, I don't tend to like retellings of The Little Mermaid, but I do like the original fairy tale. So I guess it depends on how you interpret that question, but if we're going purely off the original fairy tales, it is The Little Mermaid. Question 4 is, what is the most embarrassing classic that you have yet to read? So, this is slightly embarrassing. I don't get super embarrassed by things I haven't read because there is a whole world of books out there and I don't have time to read them all. I am slightly embarrassed by this though, and I'm especially embarrassed because Rainey, who is the one that tagged me, is going to be mad at me for this and ashamed and probably won't ever talk to me again. But I have never read Shakespeare, ever. I've never read a Shakespeare play. I have no excuse. I just haven't done it. And I'm sorry, Rainey, please don't stop being my friend. But I do have a question for Rainey or anyone else. Where's a good place to start with Shakespeare? If you have no experience with Shakespeare, what's a good starting point? I would love to know that. Be sure and let me know in the comments below. I've also never read anything Russian, which I'm not as embarrassed by, but I definitely should get to at some point in the near future. All right, let's move on. Question 5 is your favorite modern book or series that is based on a classic. And I have two answers for this one too. If we're going off of fairy tales, I already mentioned I love Beauty and the Beast. And so my favorite fairy tale retelling is Beauty by Robin McKinley. And I think this is just a fantastic, fantastic retelling. It's a quick read. Some people would classify it as middle grade. I would say young YA, older middle grade, young YA. But I just think it's a very sweet story. I really enjoy the characters. I enjoy the descriptions of the castle. And yeah, it's really, really good. Not including fairy tales, then I haven't read very many. I'm not big on classics retellings. But the one I have read, ironically, is a retelling of a Shakespeare play. And that is Juliet by Anne Fortier. And this is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. This is told in dual timeline, so it's very kind of reminiscent of like a Kate Morton. You've got your modern day timeline, and your past timeline telling the true story of Romeo and Juliet and what really happened, and then kind of the modern day resolution of the story. And it's really good. I enjoyed it. I've actually read it twice. And yeah, I think it's a solid, really enjoyable story. All right, question 6 is your favorite movie or TV series based on a classic. First of all, I just have to mention in passing Anne of Green Gables, because who would I be if I did not mention Anne of Green Gables? And Anne of Green Gables, the sequel. Not the third one, in case you're wondering. Not the third one. But the first two, these are the 80s versions from Sullivan Entertainment, I think, which are kind of the standard. But yeah, I love these. I rewatch them all the time, and they're great. But that's not my main answer. My main answer is going to actually be The Scarlet Pimpernel. This is a movie that I don't hear anyone talk about other than my circle of friends because they hear me talk about it, so they watched it, and now everyone talks about it. This was in 1982, I believe, and it stars Jane Seymour. And this, it's so, oh, it also has Sir Ian McKellen as the villain, which is also great. Yeah, so the Scarlet Pimpernel takes place during the French Revolution, and I believe it's actually a whole series of books. I've only read the first one, maybe two. And that was years ago, and I honestly can't tell you how accurate this is to the book. And I mentioned that because that's going to come up in my next question. But I just, in and of itself, as a favorite adaptation, I love this. I think it's hilarious. It's so well done, and it's got everything. It's got romance. It's got treason against the crown. It's got like spies, and yeah, it's fantastic. And you should definitely watch it, and you should read the book, and I should reread the book. It's on my list. I'm hoping to get to it this year. But yeah, The Scarlet Pimpernel. And then question 7 is, what is the worst movie adaptation of a classic? Now, I know there's a lot of bad adaptations out there, and I haven't seen most of them because I don't watch a lot of adaptations or movies in general. And the one I'm going to say is going to be an unpopular opinion, is my guess. But the one that I think is the worst movie adaptation that I've seen is The Count of Monte Cristo from, 2000, I have wrote it down, 2002 with Jim Caviezel. And I'm saying that one not because I think it's a bad movie, but because I think it's a bad adaptation. Because they totally changed the ending, which basically changes the whole point of the story, in my mind. And I was so upset and so disappointed, and I won't watch it again just because of that. But I know a lot of people really love that movie that haven't read the book. So if you take it separate, I think it's a fine movie. But as an adaptation, I think it's terrible. If you want a good adaptation of The Count of Monte Cristo, there's one from the 70s, I want to say 1975, starring Richard Chamberlain, which is fantastic. It's the same company that did The Scarlet Pimpernel that I just told you about. So check those out. 8 is the favorite editions of classics you want to collect. There are so many beautiful editions out there, and I would like to collect them all, which is ridiculous because I don't need, 20 copies of every classic on my shelves. So I'm not going to. But the ones that I do lust after just a little bit, more than just a little bit, are the Folio Society editions. I will put some pictures up here. But they are beautiful and expensive, but they're all hardcover, and each comes in its own little individual slipcase, and they're beautifully illustrated and pretty much just works of art to sit on your shelf. And so someday I want to have like a whole shelf full of Folio Society editions because they're gorgeous. And then question 9 is an underhyped book that you would recommend to everyone. First off, I don't like that question because there's not probably a single book that I would recommend to everybody because everybody's different and not everyone's going to love the same thing. So, that disclaimer being said, I'm going to go with The Tenant of Wildfell Hall by Anne Bronte. I think Anne Bronte very much falls in the shadow of Charlotte and Emily Bronte and Jane Eyre and Wuthering Heights, which are great books. I just read Tenant of Wildfell Hall last year for the first time, and I was absolutely blown away. I think this book is so incredibly well written and beautiful and so underrated, and I loved it much more than Wuthering Heights and possibly more than Jane Eyre. I need to give it a reread, but it was so good. The main character of Helen Graham is someone I aspire to be like. She is so smart and witty and yet still gracious and full of kindness, and I just love her. Now, that being said, I would not have fallen in love with this book as a teenager, I don't think. Not like I did Jane Eyre. But as an adult, I just found this so fascinating and such a fantastic character study, and I love this book. This was one of my favorite books of last year, and I'm definitely going to reread it again this year. So that is what I would say for an underrated classic. that is it. That is all the questions. I would love to hear your answers to these questions below. And if you have your own channel and you have not done this tag, please do it. I would love to find more underrated classics that I don't know about. But yeah, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching.